Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and thanks for joining us on Fronteras, A Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. As we all know, at the beginning of the year, many folks are making resolutions to be healthier. And one way people can do that is by riding a bike more. Here in Las Cruces, there is a group called Velo Cruces that is dedicated to promoting cycling and safety of bicycling in our community. One way they do that is by doing volunteer work in our community. Here's just one of the events that the group is involved with. Velo Cruces, the Optimist Club of Las Cruces and Southern New Mexico bicycle educators, recently came together for an event called Ride Right, Ride Bright at Mesilla Valley Community of Hope. The organizations offered safety equipment and repair for low-income people in the area who need their bike for transportation. Ron Robertson lives at the Las Cruces Gospel Rescue Mission. His bike needed some work, so once he found out that the event was going on, he headed over.
My bike had a complete flat, and I bought slime tires, and it didn't help. It was still dead, and that's my main transportation. So my boss told me they were doing bike repairs over here, so I came over here, and they're fixing me up right now. They're fixing me up with lights, a kickstand, fixing the tire. It's awesome.
Tammy Schurr with Velo Cruces explains what type of work is being done by volunteers.
Doing things like repairing tires and tubes or getting them new tubes and tires, adjusting brakes, adjusting derailleurs. They often have different things that go wrong with their bike, with headsets, whatever that we can do a repair on that's quick and easy, we try to do those.
Wesley Collins also lives at the Gospel Mission nearby. He says it costs a lot of money to keep up your bike. So this event is helpful.
Like right now, I ain't got a dime to put on this thing to get it back going. They're going to fix it for me, so hey, that works out. Keeps me where I can get to all these places I need to be in town.
Tammy Schurr says that the group was inspired to do this volunteer service twice a year to help promote safety for cyclists in the Mesilla Valley.
A few years ago, there were several cyclists, one that was killed up on Shore and one that was killed here on Valley Drive. And one of the things where they were homeless, didn't have lights on their bikes. And we decided as a community project we would start putting lights on bikes then, and then it grew into actually doing bike repair.
Repairs and safety opportunities that are helping people in the community who depend on their bike every single day so that they can get ahead. For KRWG, I'm Anthony Moreno. And here to tell us more about the organization and their efforts is Tammy Schurr. She is with Velo Cruces and also an NMSU graduate. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'd like to start off just if you could share with our audience a little bit about Velo Cruces.
Okay. Velo Cruces has been around for 2 years, but it grew out of other advocacy that had been happening in the Mesilla Valley through the Mesilla Valley Bike Coalition, which was around for maybe, I guess, I'm going to say between 12 and 15 years. So we started 2 years ago and picked up a lot of things that we'd already been doing in the valley and kind of made them our own.
So let's talk about these things. What are some of the events that you have involved with, that you are involved with in the community?
Well, I think we met at the Ride Right, Ride Bright thing that we have we do it twice a year, right around the time that the time changes. We go out and we put bikes, we go to Community of Hope and we put lights on bikes, and it grew into doing bike repair and partnering with the Optimist Club of Las Cruces. So they do the repairs, we do the lights, and then it grew into doing more things like getting helmets and that sort of thing. We do a little bike safety education if they're willing to listen, and it's worked really well. And it grew out of the need because that particular population rides their bicycles, and it's not inexpensive. Not too expensive to have a bike, but it's not inexpensive either. So this was a really a community thing that we could come together to do to help them out.
Yeah, I mean, I know at the event that we were able to attend, we spoke with many people who were, dependent on their bike quite a bit. I mean, that was their
their only transportation, along with maybe using the bus as well and using their bike or a combination of, yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, and so, I mean, having that event and being able to do things like that, I mean, what are some of the things that you've learned with as far as how much people depend on being able to maneuver throughout the city of Las Cruces on a bike?
A lot. I've been a bicycle commuter when I've had jobs here in town, for about 20 years, and it's improved. And when I went to school here, it's improved tremendously. But a lot of there's two populations that use their bikes a lot, and one of them is the Community of Hope clients and NMSU students. Those are the biggest populations. And there's also a growing number of people who are using their bikes as transportation, just because anything less than 3 to 6 miles, you can get there just as fast on your bike as you can in a car. So people are starting to figure that out.
Well, one of the things I notice after speaking with people who use their bike every day, and I myself use my bike every day, so I've learned is that you may underestimate the amount of upkeep that you need to have on your bicycle if you're using it every day. I mean, what are some of the things that could possibly go wrong, or some of the things you need to maintain on a regular basis?
You need to maintain the tires. I mean, tire inflation is really important. It's really hard to ride your bike if the tires are underinflated. The other is keeping your bike, the drivetrain, the chain oiled and lubed, and especially if you're riding it every day, it's going to be in the elements. And a huge thing is if you can store the bike, if not indoors, at least under something out of the weather. The southwest sun is just heck on bike tires and anything that's rubber on a bike. And those are the two basic things you can do to keep your bike upkeep. And the other is, clean your bike, wash it down and get the grime off of it. All of that stuff takes its wear and tear on your bike as well.
How important is it to really understand where you're going when you make trips on your bike? I mean, here in Las Cruces, there are some streets that are in maybe different types of shape. There are some streets that have a specific lane for bicycle traffic. What are some things that one person should consider before they hit the road on their bike?
Well, you're talking about route finding and route planning. So, I mean, you want to look at point A to point B. The Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is an MPO, they have put out a suitability map. And ironically, one of the projects we want to do at Velo Cruces is develop a map that's a little more user-friendly. But the suitability map will show you some of the basic routes and is color-coded to show you where the traffic is higher. And it doesn't necessarily show you where bike lanes or specific bike routes. But you want to look, that's a good start. And just look at, how wide are the streets? What's the volume of traffic that's on there at different days? And then, go ride that route, let's say on a Saturday or Sunday before you're going to ride it to try to get to work. I also would say try to avoid high traffic times when people are going to work in their cars, 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. No matter what street you're on in Las Cruces, is going to be more difficult to navigate than if you go a little bit earlier in the morning and you come home from work just a little bit later. And if you're going to ride at night, you want to have a light that you can both be seen and you can see by, and then having the red lights on the back. Those are, that's not the law. The law says you have to have a white front light and you have to have a rear red reflector, which is bare minimum. You want to go above the minimum.
I mean, obviously, especially if you're riding at night, riding a bike does have some hazards. What are some things that people absolutely should have on themselves to protect themselves once they hit the road on their bicycle?
Well, in riding day or night, being visible. That's you've got it. People have to see you. The next is riding on the right-hand side of the road. And many of us were taught to always ride against traffic, thinking that we could see what's coming. The problem with that idea is that that's not where traffic is expecting to find you. So you want to ride where people who are driving vehicles would be expecting to see another vehicle, which you are considered a vehicle when you're on the roadway. So riding on the right, riding with traffic, and I would say following all the traffic laws. If there's a stoplight, you stop. If there's a stop sign, you stop. And I know cyclists, we have a bad reputation as a group for not following the rules of the road. So I would say probably number one is following the rules of the road and acting like another vehicle.
When I started riding my bike, and I went shopping for a helmet, and I discovered that there's all sorts of helmets that you could purchase at various different prices, and some are different aerodynamic shapes and whatever. But is there a basic helmet that you can use? I mean, how much can you expect to spend? And is there government regulations that
Yeah,
all helmets?
there are some standards. I don't recall what the name of the group that does the standards, but basically, if all helmets that are sold are supposed to meet that big minimum standard. So really, what matters is that you like the helmet that you purchased, and that you're wearing it properly. Those are probably the two biggest things. So it doesn't matter, what it looks like, what color it is, how fancy it is, as long as you're wearing it properly and that you've got it on. I want to point out about helmets. Helmets are, it's a piece of safety equipment. There are certain crashes that are going to happen that a helmet isn't going to help you. So whether a cyclist is wearing a helmet or not is not really, the main thing. It's a smart thing to do, but it's not going. And you're not invincible once you put that helmet on. And if you're wearing it improperly, it's not going to help you well out either. So the best helmet is the one that fits you, and the one you like.
One thing that I kind of had to find out the hard way while riding a bicycle was how important it was to wear gloves.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I never thought of that when I first started riding. Was once you fall, I mean, the first things that are going to go out are your hands.
That's exactly right. And I mean, in an everyday riding your bike, the gloves are like a little shock absorber. So I mean, people think they're just a frivolous accessory, but they really do have a function just in every day. And then you just mentioned if you crash, oftentimes the first thing you do is put that hand down. I would caution you not to do that. That's a really good way to break your collarbone, but that's a natural.
Let's talk about that though. I mean, if you're losing your bicycle and you lose control, what's the best way if you can help it?
If it's a rider error and you feel or a road hazard that's going to cause you to go down and you can anticipate it, you probably want to do is roll. Let's try to roll, or not to stick a hand out or an arm out. You may break something. I mean, I've broken ribs, but a rib is a lot. Not that it's not painful, but it's a lot less of a hassle than breaking your wrist or your collarbone. So is rolling. It's just trying not to put anything out there to get stuck.
How important is it to, if a lot of people, on their way to work maybe carpool, how important is it to maybe buddy up with somebody when you're riding a bike?
That's an excellent idea, and to buddy up. We have a visibility ride that we do the second Monday of every month, and it's a training ride as well as just getting together and showing people that we can ride in traffic effectively. But we also try to teach people who come and join us for the visibility ride how to ride in traffic. And that's a great way to buddy up and ride with other people. And then, you get to work and you say sayonara, but it's great. It's the same, it's kind of like having a walking school bus, so yeah.
So how can people find out how to get with the visibility ride?
We have a Facebook page through Velo Cruces, so you can like us on Facebook. We also have velocruces.org. You can find out about our rides and all of the events that we have through our webpage.
Speaking of that, I mean, you mentioned earlier the need for lights. I also noticed when shopping for lights that they come in all sorts of styles and prices.
Yeah, prices. So there's lights to be seen by, and then there are lights that you put on your bike so that you can see. And they usually, the latter you can usually be seen by as well. And it's vitally important at night because everything changes. I mean, you lose that kind of 3D effect. Everything becomes very, it comes up faster than you think. So the higher the price of the light, or I should say, usually goes with the number of lumens that are per light. It goes up as well, and how much it's going to cost. So it just kind of depends on what your budget is, and but at the very least, you've got to have a light that you can be seen by.
Now, obviously, you mentioned budget. That's a big issue for many folks living in this area. So, if people cannot afford, a light in the rear, I mean, what sort of reflectors should they look at?
Well, it's required by law if you're sold a bike that it has to have a red rear reflector. So, the bike should already have it on it unless it's a secondhand bike. I can't speak for all the bike shops and tell you this is what they'll do, but you could go in and ask if they have. Oftentimes they'll have, they'll have a rear reflector hanging around that if somebody really, really needs one that has a bike that doesn't have one on there. we don't, if it's people come to the community of hope and really need when we do our Ride Bright, if they really need a light, we're going to put it on their bike. We don't ask questions about who they are or where they come from. We want people who are riding their bikes to be seen.
I also noticed, when you ride a bike a lot, you can lose your reflectors and lights quite a bit. I mean, it's pretty easy to do. So, how important is it to just really check your bike after every single ride?
we will, if you want to learn, there's what's called an ABC quick check. And one of the things is, I'll just go over it real quick. A is for checking to make sure you have air in your tires. B is for checking the brakes to make sure both front and back work. C is checking your crank and your drivetrain. In the Safe Routes to School system, we call D, we check for anything that's dangling that might go into your spokes or into your chain. And then E is everything else. And so that would be checking your lights, checking your quick releases, checking anything on your bike that could come loose. And oftentimes they do. And bikes, oftentimes the lights are made so that they're quick release. So that when you leave parked at a grocery store and go in, you can take them with you, so that somebody doesn't just come take them off your bike and steal them. So.
Well, speaking of stealing, how important is it to have a reliable lock that you can lock your bike up with? I know that's obviously a big problem here on the campus of New Mexico State University.
I'm sure it is. There's a new lock coming out that sprays you with some sort of thing when somebody tries to mess with it. I'm not sure how effective that one is, but there's some information about how to lock your bike properly, and also it has to do with the duration, how long you're going to leave your bike there. And bike parking, also putting it in front of a building is less likely for people to steal, because they don't want other people seeing what they're doing. So you don't want to park your bike back behind a building and leave it there for very long. And you want to make sure when you do lock it, I use a cable lock. It's not, it could be hacked, but I don't ever leave my bike locked there for very long either. So.
Good to know. There's plenty of organizations that Velo Cruces works with. I was wondering maybe if you could share with us some partnerships and how important that is to really get your mission across.
Sure. We work with the Safe Routes to School program, which is with the public schools. We work with the Optimist Club. One of their missions is to repair kids' bikes, and then they've gone over into repairing adults' bikes with us. We've been partnering with the Green Chamber recently. Let's see if I can remember everyone. Rio Grande Trail Alliance, they're another nonprofit. We've been partnering with them. I'm sure I'm going to leave somebody out, but
it seems like there's a lot.
There's a lot.
Of
We've been really trying to do some outreach and work with other organizations that have similar things that we want to do. I know we're not working with the Department of Health, but Safe Routes to Schools does, and so so we have kind of a relationship with them in that direction. A number of our members, our board members, are also on other boards. I'm on other boards and committees. One, I'm on the New Mexico Bike Summit board, which is a state organization, and we have a number of our members that do that. I don't know, were you familiar with the Rio Grande Trail that just got
Yeah, that's what I was
on?
getting ready to ask you about, with the alliance that you mentioned and, the Rio Grande Trail, if you could share with the audience. It seems pretty exciting what they're going to do.
It's very exciting. I work in the bike tourism industry, so I'm extremely excited to see what's happening. So briefly, our local representative, Jeff Steinborn, introduced a bill with another legislator, and the governor signed it a few years ago to look into the feasibility of making a trail called making the Rio Grande Trail along the Rio Grande for what we're hoping will be multi-use, being horseback riders, walkers, and cyclists. And so myself and several other people have been going to all those meetings and gotten ourselves on a committee. So I'm on a committee on the Rio Grande. It's the Rio Grande Trail Commission, and I'm on the committee that's looking at surfaces and how do you make a trail that's accessible to all the different users.
What's the goal on possibly that being in place and up and running?
Well, it's going to probably not happen in my lifetime that it'll go end to end, but southern New Mexico has a huge potential to have it start and go from south to north. As you know, most everything in New Mexico seems to come from north to south, but we have already we have a lot of infrastructure or potential infrastructure to do that, more than the north does. Now, Albuquerque has like 20 miles of Bosque Trail, and that's great, but it doesn't connect south yet. And we already have, some a little bit of connectory by using the levee roads and some of the trail systems we already have here. If we can just link them up, we could go all the way, at some point, all the way to Elephant Butte and, Tier C fairly easily. Now in the bill, there's not going to be anything about eminent domain, so nobody's, no landowner has to allow us to do this. It all has to be volunteer. So that's why I think you're going to have this patchwork of trails that don't necessarily connect right along the Rio Grande. But for cycling, there are always roads that can connect those. So I think the cycling part is going to come much sooner.
It sounds pretty exciting. Let's talk about Las Cruces.
Okay.
How is this community doing when it comes to being a bike-friendly community?
Ironically, we're right at bronze level. We've applied 3 times for bike-friendly community, and actually right now we are meeting again to our bike-friendly community task force just got started up again for our next application in about 2 years. We got the first year we applied for it, we received an honorable mention. We did not get anything, and then the last 2 we've gotten bronze. And the targets change a little bit from time to time because they have to raise the bar. But as someone who's lived in Las Cruces since 1980, I've seen vast improvements, and I see that we have a long way to go. But I'm encouraged by the improvements I've seen, and Solano is one of those. I think what people don't understand though is that you don't have, bike lanes are awesome. They're good for in certain situations. In others, like Ospina, you don't need a bike lane. It's wide enough and it's a low level traffic, so it works. I think one of the potential areas we're looking at is some of the existing ditches that we have. People already use them, but having a formal agreement to be able to use those and connect them up to get to schools, so that we have another way for kids to get to school in certain areas. So the potential is really out there. And the Bike-Friendly Community Task Force is we look at engineering, we look at enforcement, we look at education and encouragement. So we have a lot of things that that's very exciting to be a part of right now. I just went to an education meeting actually on Monday. And and we're gearing up for Bike Month in May. So we're hoping getting things out there so people can get involved in it.
What are some of the top communities in the country doing that earn them that gold?
And
status?
even they go to platinum now too, because they decided to outdo themselves. Portland is one of them. They're at a platinum level. What do they do that we don't do? They give people incentives for riding their bike. I mean, they have just as many cyclists riding in Portland as they do people, driving. I hate to say this, but one of the things they do is they de-emphasize cars because they get more people biking and walking, and that is more. And that encouragement to do that and actually putting infrastructure in so people can bike and walk is what gets them that platinum level. And I think one of the things we don't emphasize enough is also the pedestrian issue on that side. Is when you make things bikeable and walkable, it increases traffic in businesses. People can get in and out quicker. They're not spending all their time looking for a place to park. And that's what Portland has done. They make it really easy.
So do you think that there may be a disconnect between the business community and cyclists, to maybe there's an opportunity for them to
there's a huge opportunity. I travel a lot. I work in the industry, so I'm not in a lot of large communities like Portland, but I'm in a lot of smaller communities the size of Las Cruces. And there are some. Boise, Idaho is doing a great job. Missoula, Montana does a really great job of making their downtown very accessible to pedestrians and cyclists. And those downtowns are thriving. I'm not saying that they don't have cars and traffic, but they slow the traffic down. They create infrastructure for people to make it easier for them to bike and walk, and so people do. And when you're walking and biking, you can see things, and they stop and they shop.
Okay, and it's interesting, those communities you named are in colder, wetter, potentially climates that get a real winter.
One of the big bike-friendly communities is Minneapolis, and they have a huge, population that bikes all winter long. Okay. So, we have the potential here. You can bike here all winter long, and you don't have to have much clothing to do that.
Well, that's just one of the things I've noticed here is that you can ride a bike every single day here in Las Cruces.
You can, and I think, you know, as I travel more, people are asking me more about, you know, moving to Lost Cruces, and what are some of the benefits. And a lot of these people are cyclists, and I tell them, you know, you can bike year round, and that's very appealing to them. And these are active retirees that have, you know, good retirement plans that want to move somewhere where they can spend their money and enjoy the outdoors.
Okay, we only have a couple minutes left on the program, but
Okay.
I'd like to talk with you a little bit about what people should think about before they go out and purchase a bike. I know many may be thinking that, you know, they want to buy a bike and get out and you know, try to work on their health and fitness also this time of the year. But what are some things they should consider before they purchase a bike?
Well, number one, what is their budget? Number two, what kind of riding they want to do. Do they want to ride to work? Do they need to carry stuff? Are they going to ride during the dark? Are they only going to ride during the daytime? How fit are they already? You know, it's a fairly easy thing to do, but you also want to have a certain level of fitness. It does take a little bit of stamina. And I would say we do have, look on Velo Cruces, we do offer bike education courses. So I know people are like, oh, I can just get on a bike and ride with traffic. It's a lot different once you get out there and you're going, whoa, hadn't thought about that. So take a bike, you know, take a course to just reintroduce you to how to ride in traffic and what to think about.
Well, I mean, it's just, there's so much to think about when you're thinking about that. We just have like less than a minute left, but maybe you could share with us again about how they can, you know, learn about these educational events when it comes to bicycle safety.
Go to our website, velocruces.org, and we have an education tab. Click on that. We also partner with Velo Paso, our sister organization there, and offering bike education courses. So, and we're going to be scheduling those for the 2017. We're having a meeting in early January to schedule all of the stuff that we're going to try to do in the new year.
Okay, and you also mentioned that you're on social media as well?
Correct, we're on Facebook.
Okay, good to know. Well, thank you so much for being with us and sharing all this wonderful information about cycling.
All right, thanks for having me, Anthony. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And we want to thank you for joining us for Fronteras at Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno.